Good morning. This is Levi with the Light Radio with a very special guest in studio from Operation Christmas Child. Please welcome Elena Nicholson.
Hi, thank you for having me. I grew up in a former Soviet Union with my sister Yulia, and where we grew up, it was a very small town in a very small house, in a very broken house, in the sense that, we had a lot of broken windows and we could not fix them because of how poor my family was. And my parents, they would go off and they would work all day long, but they would never get paid with food or money. They would actually get paid with alcohol. So as growing up, as a child, there wasn't a lot of food at our house, and so we just had to go into the nature and see what we could find in the nature and kind of survive on that. And then around the age of 8, my parents were caught stealing some items, and so they were put into prison. And myself and my sister were put into an orphanage, and that's kind of where it's all started.
Everything that you just described is so unconscionable for our culture, for our lifestyle here. I understand that you received a shoebox gift from Operation Christmas Child. What was that first experience like?
Well, this was when my sister and I, we were in the second orphanage. And so I was between 10 to 12 or so years old. And for me to just have the opportunity to be one of the people to receive a shoebox filled with, fun items that we put in there was just an amazing kind of experience, in the sense that until that point, my sister and I, we have never received a gift before. And so if you can just imagine, a child who's 10 to 12 years old and just sitting on the floor, and these people just hand out these shoe boxes to us. And I was just amazed, me personally, just amazed in the fact of how amazing my shoebox looked on the outside. I mean, it was wrapped in a colorful wrapping paper. It was bright. It was shiny. It like the coolest thing that I have ever seen by that time. So much so that I was actually afraid to open my box, because I thought the outside of it was perfect. It was beautiful. It was shiny. And I was actually afraid to open it because I wasn't sure what the inside would look like, or if it would even measure up to the way that it looked on the outside, just because I've been disappointed so many times by that point in my life. And so I just didn't want that shoebox to be another disappointment. And so I was just really fascinated by what it was looking on the outside. But I also wanted my sister to have the best that she could have. And so as an older sibling, my thinking was, if she doesn't like her shoebox, she could have mine. But God is very personal with these shoeboxes. I mean, we are asked to pack, pray, and send, and He takes it the rest of the way. And so when my sister had her shoebox and she opened it, she was amazed with her shoebox. Everything was artistic. Everything was related to her age kind of group, and she loved everything in her shoebox. And so she didn't want any part of mine, which was fantastic. Because when I was seeing my sister open her shoebox, and her just pulling out one item after another, and her smile is just growing bigger and bigger and bigger as she's showing me all of these items, that smile gave me courage to open my box. And when I opened my box was literally glowing pink from the inside out. And the cool thing about it is just the fact that I like color pink. But the coolest thing about it is just the fact that knowing that God knew that about me, and He gave me a shoebox of color pink, and everything in it was fantastic. I had socks that were pink. They were fantastic for a wintry night at the former Soviet Union at the orphanage. I had an actual Barbie with blonde hair and a sparkly pink dress, and I had this really fascinating pink pen that I just fell in love with. And I loved everything in my box because everything was meant for me. And even though by the age of 10 to 12, I've never felt like I was being loved by anyone, but when I received my shoebox, that was the first time I felt like some stranger was loving on me by simply packing this shoebox. And so that was the first time I felt like I was being loved, being accepted by a person that I've never even met. And that feeling felt really nice. But more than that, just receiving the little booklet that comes with the shoeboxes that kids receive, and it's called The Greatest Gift booklet. And that booklet changed my life because it's stories about Jesus. And that was the first time I heard or read about Jesus. And so when I read that booklet, which was in my native language, I thought it was a fairy tale, the biggest fairy tale I have ever read, because of the stories that it was telling me and the fact that it was saying that the creator of everything came down and he died for a nobody like me, an orphan. And so for an orphanage person with the mindset, just thinking of how would a King of Kings and Lord of Lords, like, why would he do that? Like, that can't be true. That's just biggest fairy tale you have ever read. My mind could not wrap around that type of love, and just the fact that he did that for us, even though I thought it was a fairy tale, I still was hoping and praying that maybe this story that I read, maybe this Jesus that I read about was a true person, was a true Lord. And so I actually started to pray to God for a family that would want me and my sister together, and he provided that family in 2004.
Elena, as I'm hearing you recall this, I am tearing up from just hearing this. Here I am, a father of four, and now newly grandfather of a
Oh,
little daughter.
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And, she is so precious. And there
Mm-hmm.
are times, Elena, where I see her crying. I run to her and I just hold her and I can't stop
Mm-hmm.
holding her. And I feel like going back, just hearing you, like to little Elena, and just holding you like my granddaughter and saying, "Oh, Elena, you're
Mm-hmm.
so precious." And yet God did that to you. God,
Yes.
God
Yes.
gave you that love, and to hear your experience, that you just said that God cares
Mm-hmm.
for you so much that he perfectly put the Barbie in the pink dress with the pink wrapping paper. That is the
Mm-hmm.
love of Jesus. It's
Absolutely.
beautiful. Yeah, that is amazing. It is an amazing story that you have, and thank you so much for sharing this with us. How did this work with you coming to the United States? What was the logistics, and was there any supernatural encounters or happenings with that?
So I would have to say, I mean, as a, between 10 to 12-year-old child, you don't really think about all the things that would have to take place us coming to America. I have heard from my dad, my adoptive dad, the fact that anytime there was some type of a financial need, for any kind of papers or anything, and it would be like, $4,000 needed to pass on this paperwork or whatever, he always said that whenever the financial need was there, they would like be coming home, driving home and be praying, God provide this, God provide this. And they would drive up and they would check the mail in the mailbox and there'll be the $4,000 that they needed, and just God providing in the whole prospect of it. And just the fact that being from former Soviet Union, the way process would go is usually the parents to be would come to the orphanage, meet up with the kids, hang out with the kids for a minute, and then they leave back to the United States. And then they'll have to make another trip to come and basically pick up the kid and leave. And my sisters and I situation, my parents came and we left with them. So there wasn't a second trip or anything like that. I don't know if the orphanage was like, okay, we're done with them, take them
Yeah,
away. I'm just kidding. But, God worked
yeah,
it out
right,
in the
right.
way that my parents didn't have to make a second trip over there because they had two boys of their own that were very, very young. So I have two adoptive brothers now. So I am the oldest of the four. Woohoo.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm very blessed with the family that God has provided me with.
Oh, Elena, I'm bubbling over with the love of Jesus and how much he loves
Mm.
his children. And you are absolutely like just such a walking testament to this. And Elena, I'm speaking to you because you
Mm.
are from Operation Christmas Child. How good is our God that he put
Oh,
the perfect
right?
spokesperson for Operation Christmas Child, Elena Nicholson, that,
Mm.
from here where it may have looked that 8 years old, you had no hope, but God had other
Mm-hmm.
plans for your life. And how does it feel to now be working on the opposite side of this powerful ministry, giving hope to boys and girls just like you?
It is so real in the sense of just like you were saying, I was an orphan, but God got me out of that. And just the fact that looking back now and just the realization, like in the Bible, it says, God uses the broken. And I see that every
Yes.
time I get to have the chance to share my story, even though some of the things in my story might be sad and what I went through and things, but I never like to look at those things. I just like to see in the fact that God was victorious in my story, and I get to
Amen.
not only share my story and try to be like, God is amazing, and we get to partner with God through these shoeboxes. We get to pack, we get to pray, we get to send, and He, takes it to the right child. And just for
Yeah,
me to
yeah.
be a part of that, just an amazing thing, because I would have never imagined myself being here, because as an orphan, by the age of 18, I would have gotten kicked out of the orphanage, and I would have tried to do what I could to survive with my sister. But in reality, a lot of the kids from the orphanage would turn to selling their bodies on the street because they need to make
Yeah.
money to feed
Yeah.
themselves and stuff like that. But God had a different story for me, and He had a different plan, and He used the pink shoebox to change my life. And just being
Amen.
able to share that, as well as packing the shoeboxes on the side for the other kids, knowing full well that it is so much more than just a shoebox. Like the kids, they love everything we put in the shoebox. I mean, I loved everything I had in my shoebox, but the thing that we loved the most was the fact that somebody cared, somebody packed. And more than that, we get to share with them through a shoebox. We get to share with them the greatest gift, and that is Jesus, and how He loves us.
Amen.
And, He came down for not just people here in America, but all over the world. And that's just an
Yes.
amazing thing that we could do simply by packing a shoebox, and God could use that and change the kids' lives.
Elena, as you were saying all this, I can imagine that you have these moments that you're packing one of these shoe
Mhm.
boxes, and I'm guessing, you're praying over it that there'll be another Elena out there with the
Mhm.
perfect thing that you're packing. What's an account? What's a time that you felt so maybe heavy in the spirit where you were just praying over this item that it would find that perfect person, just like the Barbie found you?
I had to grow up really fast with taking care of my sister and myself.
Yeah.
And so I just know that, like, anytime I'm packing a shoebox, there's one time I would pack a stuffed animal, just praying that all of these kids that have to grow up really fast due to the circumstances that they are in, and the knowledge that when they get a shoebox and they get, let's say, a stuffed animal, that for that 5 minutes or so they could be a child again, because they got the
Yes.
stuffed animal that they can hug at night, the way I did with my teddy bear that was pink that I got in my shoebox. And just the fact that they don't have to hide themselves through trying to pretend to be strong, independent kind of kids. But with these stuffed animals, with these toys that we pack, they get to experience the possibility of being just a child for the first time ever. So
Yeah. Elena, what was that moment in your life that you would say was the Jesus moment for you? Like officially giving your life to Jesus?
receiving the shoebox was a big part of it. Even though I thought it was a fairy tale, I was still hoping for the hope that what Jesus was saying was true. And so I prayed for a family and being adopted. And even after being adopted, truthfully, I am always waiting for that other shoe to drop, just because of the way I grew up. And
Yes.
I was just like, this is still too good to be true. Like, there's no way this could be it. Like, there has to be
Right.
something, that doesn't go
Yep.
right or something. I believe that God used my adoptive dad here to show me one-fourth of the love that God has for us, because nobody on earth can measure up to the love that God has for all of his kids, right?
Amen.
And so he
Amen.
used my dad here to show me that love, because he was trying to reach to me. And my dad here, he's an amazing man. He's like the big teddy bear, kind of thing. And so
Yeah.
He learned to say "I love you" in former Soviet Union language.
Oh.
And so, like, every night, he would come into my sisters and I room, which we shared after we were adopted. And he would come into our room and he would give us a hug and he would kiss us on our forehead. And he says, "Ya тебя люблю." And as a child, he was 12 at that time. That was the first time I've heard "I love you" from just anyone.
Yeah.
And so just hearing that for the first time as a 12-year-old, I was like, okay, what do you want from me? Like, I wasn't sure how to, receive it. I didn't know what he wanted in return. I didn't know what to do with that knowledge of him just coming in and saying that to me until he started doing that every night. He would come into a room and he would kiss us on our forehead, give us a hug, and then he say, "I love you," but in a former Soviet Union language. And as an orphan, I heard a lot of times my parents they worked in a church, and so we would go to the church after we were adopted, and hearing that in the church, people would say, "God is your loving father," and all of, I didn't know what that meant until my adoptive dad, he was like, I love you every night. And so I come to realize that he was given to me his love freely, like he wasn't expecting anything in return, he was just giving it to me freely, and I could accept it, I could reject it, and it kind of clicked in my mind. That's how God was with me as well. And so it took about a year or so after I was actually adopted for me to finally say, okay, with God, there is no other shoe that will be dropping. He is who he says he is today, tomorrow, and yesterday, And the amazing thing, like, as I was growing up, is just looking back now and seeing how he was reaching out to me even before I knew him, because he knew me, because he created me the way that I am. And so even when I was in former Soviet Union, in the abusive home with no food or anything, he was still there. He was still reaching out, like he was providing us with food in the nature so that way my sister and I would not starve, and just looking back now in the sense of I would not be here today without what he has done.
Amen.
Through my life.
Amen, Elena. This is such a powerful testimony. Thank you for sharing this. God bless your father for showing the love of Jesus to you and really being a part of that process of making Jesus real to you and you experiencing that love. Have you seen anything with Operation Christmas Child and these shoeboxes where it's been a change in the culture here in America in the last 20 years?
As crazy as things are in the world, people are still getting together and packing these boxes. I mean, we have volunteer after volunteers packing these boxes, and the fact that, they're just trying to love on these kids and sharing the love of Jesus to these kids, and the power of volunteering and packing these boxes and showing the love of Jesus, even though we might all have different opinions and different ways of thinking, and non-Christians would pack these boxes, and long run, they would share the Jesus love with these kids with just packing shoeboxes, and just the amazing way that the simple shoebox could bring us all together for one purpose, and that is just loving on these kids and sharing the love of Jesus with these kids.
The power of God and how God is so bigger than us and our minds, where he can use anybody, even non-believers, to show the love of Jesus. Elena, what is one thing you would like to tell our listeners today about Operation Christmas Child, and more specifically, what these boxes do for children?
There's a lot of stories that Operation Christmas Child has. I had the opportunity to, be one of the people that go and actually deliver shoeboxes in Uganda in 2011.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, that was an amazing trip, just being on the other side of it, doing a full circle in the sense of, like, we finished up our last distribution in Uganda. That Friday was in the orphanage. Going back to the orphanage, even if it's in Uganda and delivering these shoeboxes, like, that was a very hard trip for me in the sense that it was just, like, technically being back where I came from,
Yes.
But also being the giver instead of the receiver, and just seeing all of these kids that every time I gave them a shoebox, they said thank you, and I knew that they meant it because I was one of those kids when I was younger.
Beautiful.
And I remember there was one kid, he was about, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. He was very tiny.
Yeah.
And I just remember that one of our teammates was holding him and he had a shoebox in his hand. To me, I realized at that time was just the fact that we all hunger for the acceptance. We are all hungry for the love, and at that time, at that point of time, he had someone there physical that was able to hug him, that was able to love on him, that was able to hold him. And so he was okay with putting that shoebox aside and opening it later, but he was just hanging on to teammates of mine. And just seeing that kind of broke my heart because I was like, I was one of those kids. All I wanted was love. All I wanted was acceptance and just realization that we pack these boxes and we send them away to different kids, but we never really think about the possibilities of like, God isn't just in America. He's all over the place. And I know we all want to pack up our things and go to Uganda or former Soviet Union and love on these kids and hug them and do all of the things that we can for them. But in reality of it, we can't. Not all of us can. And so we can pack a box, we can pray for that box, and we can send that box. And I believe wholeheartedly that God, He's everywhere and He is there right now with each and every one of these kids that are receiving a shoebox, that are opening the shoeboxes, that are looking through all of the items that we packed. And He is there with them, loving them. He is there with them, hugging them. He is there with them, giving that hope and the love that we could never give them. And that's because we got the chance to pack a shoebox. And then God went with it, and He loves these kids, and He surrounds them with His love that we could never even try to do.
100%. Elena, an amazing testimony from an amazing person who has accepted the love of Jesus, and now God is using you powerfully, and I am just so honored to be talking with you, and I appreciate your time. Elena Nicholson, thank you. God bless you for being the hands and feet of Jesus and being so powerful in Operation Christmas Child and giving kids hope through the gift of Jesus.
So thank you so much. Have a good day.